Around 8 to 10,000 years ago, the climate began to change on the plains. For reasons that will probably always be debated, the larger mammals began to disappear. Some scientists believe changes in the climate altered the vegetation and cut off the adequate food supply. Others believe it was the success of these early human hunters that killed them off. Maybe it was a combination of these things or possibly other influences. But all evidence points to the fact that by 8,000 years ago, the large game was gone and only smaller mammals were left. All trace of these paleo hunters disappeared also. Perhaps they followed the large game to a new area, or perhaps they simply stayed and adapted to the new climate. But by 8000 BP, or before the present, the Clovis, Folsom, and Plainview cultures that had survived on the large game were gone. The new cultures that left their mark on Texas developed more weapons, smaller than the Clovis Point, less artistic than the Folsom, to kill a wider variety of game. Smaller pieces were more quickly made and shaped to specific tasks. Stone and bone tools were developed. This hide scraper helped clean animal hides, and these bone awls were used to poke holes in pieces of leather so they could be sewn together. And down through the centuries, the bright colors of Alibate's flint stand out. 600 miles to the southwest, near El Paso, is another location that tells the story of prehistoric inhabitants of Texas. Waco Tanks is an area of natural cisterns where rainwater collects. Some of these cisterns, or wacos, are quite deep and could hold hundreds of gallons of water. Early hunters knew they could always find water here. Evidence of human habitation goes back about 8,000 years to the dawn of the Archaic period. The hunters that came here found shade from the desert sun and plants growing near the water. Plants like yucca, cactus, and mesquite provided food to supplement the game and fiber for weaving. The rocks also provided protection from the elements and a sheltered place to wait for game. And while he waited, the hunter drew pictographs on the rock walls, stories of the hunt, prayers for good hunting, or records of the seasons. Over the centuries, this part of Texas became more and more arid, and these natural cisterns became even more important. Today, Waco Tanks is a state park, and efforts have been made to document and preserve the area. 500 miles to the southeast near Del Rio, Texas, another state park protects more prehistoric treasures. Seminole Canyon State Park on Lake Amistad, where the Rio Grande, the Pecos, and the Devil's Rivers flow together, tells another story of ancient Texas. One of the most extensive collections of pictograph art in the world is found here. Visitors can take a guided tour of Fate Bell Shelter near the park center.
Earlier that these people migrated south into Mexico in the winter. If you were to leave some surplus food or tools, or you had some special ceremony, a religious ceremony at some site, and you wanted to return to that place on your northward migration, how would you identify this site? You think it would be easy? Let me tell you, it's not. Because as you travel from here to the mouth of this canyon, there's 32 more rock shelters between here and the mouth in 3 miles. If you migrate down to the southern part of Parita Canyon, you will have passed 400 rock shelters by the time you get back up here the following year. So it isn't as easy as it may seem at first glance. So if you wanted to try to find this place again, all you have to do, or you or your clan could walk along, and all you have to do is look for the place that says 182.5 Canyon Road. You can see these are pretty small handprints, and these are not children or women. These were done by the shamans, and they were small people. You can see that there are thumbs on each of these hands. These are left hands that they did it. They used a stick to paint a line starting on either the pinky or the thumb, and they would go down the heel of the hand, coming up on the opposite side. Then they would go to the index finger or the third finger, going down, and it forms a letter U. And then when they get it done, they press their hand up against the wall, and that's it. That particular technique is not found anywhere but here.
Cave dwellings along the canyon wall still bear smoke stains from ancient campfires. Excavations of these caves or overhangs have revealed much about the daily lives of the archaic hunters and gatherers that lived here. Pictographs are drawn in a style unique to this region.
This is the deepest and the oldest mortar hole is right here. The oldest paint was found in this hole. They would scrape the paint off of here. They would add the minerals, whatever color they happened to be working with that day. They would mix it up with a stone called a mano. Some of those have been found with paint on them. Then they would dip the paint out of these holes with a river mollusk shell. You can see a fair amount of white paint in that hole right over there that was left unused. Remember, that has dried up, and the paint was probably a half an inch deep when it was abandoned. We know that based on the styles that were done here, most of these paintings that are up here, all that is except for this one over here, are very old. This one is probably the most recent one here because there's some style differences that suggest that it would probably be somewhere between 1600 and 2500 years old. Most of the other stuff is probably quite a bit older than that. The first one that was painted is this deer-headed shaman that you see right here. What's unique about this is that it actually has two very large butterfly-like wings, and it's called a winged shaman. And because there are paintings on top of it, it's not always real easy to tell what it is. Most seem to think that the shaman, the winged shaman, stands by himself, in that the wings simply represent power, dominance, his ability to communicate. These other people would come along and paint on top of him in hopes of absorbing his power.
Also nearby at Langtree, Texas, evidence of a bison leap has been uncovered. There, the archaic hunters would stampede herds of buffalo off the cliff while others waited below to skin the game. At the Woody Museum in San Antonio, the collection of artifacts found in Seminole Canyon is housed in an interesting exhibit called Ancient Texans. Museum curator Roberta McGregor directs the exhibit. Tools and weapons recovered in the ancient rock shelters tell us about their daily lives.
We call that the woman's knife. That's really a unique artifact. It has a wooden handle and a blade or a uniface stone cutting tool. The woman, just as we sharpen our knives when they get dull, would sharpen this knife by taking little flakes around the corner. The most common lithic artifact we find in the lower Pecos are projectile points, what we call in Texas arrowheads. And the second most common are these blades from the woman's knife that have been sharpened so much they're just very small pieces. And this is different things that a man would carry in his tool bag, his tool kit. Little wooden foreshafts for his spears, and a projectile point and bifaces.
Early inhabitants here adapted well to their surroundings. They gathered plants to add to their diet. Mesquite beans were pounded into meal, and cactus fruit was dried and carried as a ready food source. The yucca plant provided fiber to be woven into sandals or bags to carry supplies.
This was a very nutritious diet, we know that. The most common food that they ate was the prickly pear, nopalitos. They also used the yucca and sotol and lechuguilla bulbs that they cooked for 48 hours. It's really labor intensive. You'd have to dig a pit, put the bulbs of these plants in, put wet grass over the top of the bulbs, cover it with dirt. As the fruit of the prickly pear would ripen, and this was when there would be quite an abundance of food, and we believe that's the time when the peoples would come, the different bands would come together, and they would arrange marriages at that time, probably have initiation.
How did these early people look? Through forensic science, skeletons found buried in one of the shelters have been reconstructed to reveal a man, woman, and child. Also, the shaman or medicine man was found buried with his bag of tools and potions. The bag has rattlesnake vertebrae woven into its border. Possibly this man was considered to have special magic powers. Other findings in the caves along Seminole Canyon tell about the daily life of these people. Many discarded shoes made from leather or from the fiber of lichigilla plants have been found. Their clothing was simple, loincloths and strips of rabbit skin woven into capes. The people also decorated themselves in shells and bird bones strung on fiber strands for necklaces or earrings. A model of an archaic campsite from possibly 5,000 years ago shows what the daily life of these people might have been. They were nomadic, moving from shelter to shelter for hundreds of miles along the canyon. But the greatest heritage left behind by these people are the hundreds of pictographs scattered through the canyon.
We would call this a panther shaman. It shows transformation. This shows an anthropomorph being turned into his power animal, the shaman, and you can see the claws on his arms and his black belly. And always the atlatl is in the right hand, and always the spears are in the left hand.
Because the pictographs of Seminole Canyon and the lower Pecos are exposed to the elements, many of them are in danger of being lost. Also, mindless destruction by people who come to the area is taking its toll. The state park system, the Whitty Museum, and other groups such as the Rock Art Foundation are taking steps to protect and preserve this historic treasure. Detailed photos have been taken and paintings have been copied to allow the public to see the art without destroying and endangering the original work.
The state of Texas came along and bought this canyon to preserve this and about 90 other sites here in the park, so that we all have a chance to come and look at these places. Sorry we don't have many answers, but it's maybe what we don't know that we enjoy so much.
All these sites across Texas are ours to enjoy and protect. Scientists learn more with each discovery, and the puzzle of the lives of these ancient cultures is slowly being pieced together through the painstaking research and vigilant care of many people. Perhaps future discoveries will reveal even more about these ancient Texas cultures.